Hello and welcome to the Discover History YouTube channel. We're almost at 100 videos. As we said just before the lockdown started, we would give you one YouTube video a day, and after lockdown and when COVID-19 becomes a distant memory that we'll be studying in history, what we'll also do is continue with our YouTube channel. However, we'll probably be doing just one video a week or two a week. We haven't really decided yet, or maybe one a month. It depends on you. If you want more videos, we can do them. If you want less videos after lockdown, we're happy doing that as well. But at the moment, as promised, one video per day, and we're almost up to 100. How shall we celebrate 100 videos? Maybe a big video, maybe a video with a character again. We've already had one, which was one of Florence Nightingale's nurses, and at the moment I haven't actually done a character video. Anyway, today we're going to look at prehistory, the prehistoric period, and it is actually an interest of mine. I've always had an interest in prehistory because I think it's where all the things that we take for granted comes from, really. If you think about it, fire, heat, cooking, eventually pottery, things like that, it all really stems from prehistory, right back in the Stone Age. Now, just to introduce the age, it is often referred to as a Stone Age, mainly because most of the things that were used at that time were made out of stone. If you go to some of the Highlands of Scotland, the islands and Highlands of Scotland, for example, Skara Brae, probably the best example to go to, we've got a true flint stone home there. It absolutely looks like bedrock. Yes, the timber, the turf, and that's gone off the roof, but the houses there, if you have a look at them, Google them maybe, you actually have everything made out of stone. The bed frames are made out of stone. There's even cupboards on the wall. They're also made out of stone. So the reason why the prehistoric period, or in particular the Stone Age, is called the Stone Age is literally things were made out of stone. This is an age before metal comes in, so we're just making use of what's on the floor, the pebbles, the stones that can be found all over the place. Eventually, the best form of stone, if you want to call it stone, some people say it's technically not a stone, is flint. And the reason why flint is such a good stone is the fact that once it gets broken open, once you get a nodule of flint and you break it open, you can actually make a lot of things out of it if you're very careful in how you nap it. In other words, how you break it up and shape it. Flint is also extremely sharp, and when I say sharp, I have found slithers or tiny flakes of flint that are actually sharper than a broken glass, for example. They are extremely sharp. Which is one of the reasons why our ancestors took to using flint over a lot of the other stones, because you can shape it and you can create things that is unbelievably sharp. Now, I have a few items of flint to show you, but before I do that, just get into the feel of what it was like to be living thousands of years ago. Let's take it back to a period in the Mesolithic, for example, which is the Middle Stone Age, 10,000 BC, for example, a very, very long time ago. Well, most of Britain at that time was getting warmer. We'd come out of the Ice Age, so things were getting much, much warmer. It's becoming more habitable to live this far north, because what you have to remember is at the end of the last ice age, the ice caps came to around about Wolverhampton. So if you look at Worcestershire or the Midlands, we're right on the edge of habitable land. So it's starting to get warmer, and as the ice caps start to recede even further north, we start having lots and lots of trees. So where I'm sat, for example, some of the schools that we go to in the Midlands, some of the heritage sites we go to in the Midlands, for example, we would have been surrounded by trees. It was quite foresty. You would have also had animals that we often don't see anymore in this country. We have herds of reindeer. Yes, there are herds of reindeer, mainly in the Cairngorms area of Britain now, but that was a reintroduction. We'd frankly killed them all off, or most of them migrated when it got warmer. We also had bison in this country. If you go towards Pershore, where the Breeden Hill is, there is evidence of cave lions there, and we also had the great cave bears, we had the woolly rhinos, the woolly mammoth, herds of wild horses. It was a very different time. But the Mesolithic is the middle Stone Age, so it's slap bang when things are starting to change, and change quite dramatically. The Stone Age itself can actually be broken down into three phases, really. We have the Paleolithic, which is the Old Stone Age, often referred to as Old Stone Age. The Mesolithic, which is the Middle Stone Age. Things are starting to really happen in this period. And then we have the New Stone Age, which is the Neolithic. So you could put it down as Old, Middle, or New, or if you want to be technical, remember the word lithic is stone. We could go Paleolithic, Mesolithic and Neolithic. Some people often say, well, how do you remember those very technical names? Well, the best way of remembering it, as I always say, is usually the oldest within a family is your parents. So think what begins with P, parents, Paleolithic, obviously. When you think of Mesolithic, just think of middle. It begins with an M, so does Mesolithic. And then if you think of Neolithic, just link it with the letter N for new, and that's where you are. So if we go back to prehistory, if we go back specifically to the Stone Age, when humans are using stone tools, it was a very different environment. It's getting warmer, about 10,000 BC, Middle Stone Age. We're starting to do a lot more than we ever have done, really. But when people took this stone, these nodules of flint, and broke them open with flint knapping, like I said, they could produce all sorts of things. Spears, what is often referred to as sort of a combination tool, a tool that can be used for many, many things. You can create awls for making holes in the animal skin. You can pretty much make anything. However, I always have children ask me when we do this in schools, did they ever make swords out of flint? Sadly not. The closest you will get to that is probably in the Neolithic, when we start farming, and they often used to take, for example, a deer antler and then set it with tiny little blades. That's probably the closest you'll get to a sword really, but that was used for scything down crops, for example. However, we've been talking about prehistory, we've been talking about the Stone Age, the flint stones. The only problem is I haven't shown you any yet, so I'm going to start with this chunky piece of flint here. Now, this item here, have a little guess what it is to start with. It is extremely heavy, and it's made out of one big nodule of flint. So this has been knapped. So the person has taken a hammerstone, which is a round pebble, or a deer antler as another form of hammer, and has knapped it. In other words, hit it at strategic angles and flaked off the bits that is not required. Those bits that flake off, by the way, can actually be used elsewhere. But what you've created here is a big, big, chunky bit of flint. But have you guessed what it is yet? Some people would say it's obviously a spear point. It's the right shape for a spear point. The only problem is it is not a spear. It's completely the wrong item. It's definitely not a spear point. What this actually is what we like to call a hand axe. And a lot of people would say, well, if it's an axe, this is what they were using to chop trees down. The problem is, if you take the word literally, so we've got an axe that fits in the hand, this would actually be quite uncomfortable to use if you were going to use it to chop down a tree. It wasn't used for that whatsoever. The name is actually a bit of a mystery name, really. It's quite an awkward name, because when you hear the word axe, you automatically think chopping trees. However, if you think of what I just said and take out the word trees, it's actually a piece of flint used for chopping, but it's not for chopping trees. It would be just not practical for that purpose. So this is a hand axe, and what it would have been used for is predominantly for chopping up meat. So if I just hunted some deer, or as just taken down a mammoth, which would have been literally a mammoth job, excuse the pun, the mammoth or any form of meat would have to be chopped up pretty quick. There's no way you could drag the thing off with you. It would be too heavy. But you need to chop it up so you can get rid of it before other animals come. You have to remember these cave lions or even hyenas that we have in this country, they will soon appear because they will smell the blood, they will smell the death. So you do have to work quite quickly, and this is literally for chopping up that meat. So you would be hacking at it with your hand. You could also use it in this method as well, they believe. Remember, we can't speak to a Stone Age person, but it does work in the hand that way or that way for literally chopping at the meat, and the edge is extremely sharp, as all flint is. If you do ever handle any flint objects, really do be careful with it. It is extremely sharp stuff. So it's a hand axe, or shall we say a cleaver, really, a hand cleaver for chopping up meat. It can also be used to smash open bone to get to the marrow, so it's quite a useful tool. If you've got certain root vegetables, which we know they were gathering, this can actually be used for digging them out, and it can also be used for chopping up or smashing up plants and breaking open nuts, for example. So it's a good tool to have, really. They do come in different sizes. That's the largest hand axe that I own. I do have a smaller hand axe here, because you would just look absolutely idiotic trying to use one of those on a small animal, for example. So this is a smaller hand axe used in the same way, so it fits nicely in the hand for cutting up meat. It can be used for digging out or smashing open nuts with as well, so like I said, multi-purpose. And I also have a smaller one, and this smaller one is often looked upon as being a spear, but it's not a spearhead at all. It's the wrong shape for that, really, but it's nice and small. But when we think of Stone Age people, when we think of these Flintstone people, we must get out of our head straight away that they're using chunky things because they can't make anything so delicate. However, they did. When you start getting towards the Mesolithic, and especially in the Neolithic, they're making some very intricate items, really. They're not making big chunky stuff anymore. And this object here is a very special object. This is actually known as a flint core, and a flint core was used for creating very tiny blades, and they are made by chipping away, literally napping or flaking as it's called, tiny slithers, really delicate slithers off that one piece. So that is actually the core. And I've got here some of the blades that have been removed off that core. So there we have one very delicate little blade like that one there. We also have another lovely blade there, and they do get smaller. For example, we have this unbelievably tiny blade, tiny little flake, and some more tiny pieces here. So as you can see, you can produce some quite delicate things, really. Now, why would you be using blades that small? Well, for one, that can be used for skinning. They can also be used for cutting to a certain degree, but we also know that these could be set inside things. If you think back to what I was saying, you can create a side. You can get, for example, a deer antler, and these can be set in it. You can also make harpoons and that sort of thing. So the tiny pieces can be used for quite delicate things. So I actually really enjoy talking about the Stone Age. It is absolutely fascinating period in history, and what I would say is go out and have a look, even if it's a quick Google, at things like hand axes. Especially look up polished hand axes. They're absolutely amazing things. Maybe not very practical, they may have just been treasured things to have. Look at this beautiful object as such. Anyway, as always, please do comment on here. Please let us know what you want to see. If you want to see more flint objects, trust me, I have a fair few. Do let us know. Remember, this is as much your site as it is our site. On that note, stay safe, and we'll see you soon. Bye bye.